Good morning. My name is Juhani Siro. I'm an account executive for ATR. And with me, I have two members of our data and AI team here, Iidaliisa Pardalin and Janne Marjalaakso. Would you like to say a couple words of yourself?
Yeah. Hello, Janne Marjalaakso. Have been working for ATR Soft about 6 years now and been part of many types of development, maintenance and research projects and as Juhani said, also part of the data and AI team.
Yeah, and hi from me as well. My name is Iidaliisa Pardalin. I've been with ATR for a bit over 3 years now, and my title is AI Specialist, and for pretty much the whole 3 years that I've been here, I've been focusing on all kinds of AI and data projects.
Thanks. So our topic here today is why AI projects fail and how to succeed in them. That's a quite broad topic. So let's break it into smaller themes. First go through the failure, then the recipe for success, and then finally human aspect. How does AI affect us as workers? But let's kick off this webinar with the theme why AI projects fail. At least to me, it struck in the 2024 when Rand came out with the study saying that 80% of all the AI projects would fail. And why it struck me was the fact that it was much higher percentage compared to other IT projects. And then 1 year went by, and then MIT came out with a new study saying that the Gen AI projects, 95% of those would fail. Now, these are pretty big numbers. How do you see them through your experience?
Yeah, it is true that MIT claimed that 95% of the AI projects fail. And of course, we have to give some credibility to MIT since they are one of the top engineering schools in the world. And of course, the research has some valid points to be taken. But the research was still openly criticized by many. For example, it had quite small sample size and the research question was biased itself because they invited the companies to discuss about the problems of AI, which itself drives to negative results for the research. And this leads to the situation where the results had been derived from qualitative rather than quantitative data because they were based on interviews. And maybe this partly tells about the fact that there still are not many AI projects that have produced quantitative data, and also about the problematic nature of defining what actually is a failure and what is not. And I think Iidaliisa will tell us more about that.
Yeah, a lot can be said about these reports and whether the numbers are actually as big, they're staggering as they have been reported. But still, I think it has resonated with a lot of people. I think at least in my LinkedIn feed has been filled with people sharing these reports. So I guess maybe that tells about people having issues with AI projects and being frustrated about them. But yeah, what I found interesting in especially the MIT report is how failure was defined. So in that report, I think failure was taken to look at there was no measurable business impact or no clear monetary return on investment. Not necessarily that the AI itself didn't work or they made models that couldn't perform the way they wanted to. And especially when we're talking about pilots and proof of concepts, the issue is not that can we make the AI work or not. Also, it could be in a proof of concept that it's a very valid end result that, okay, it didn't work. And that doesn't mean that it's a failure if you're trying to figure out if it works or not. But also, even if organizations are technically succeeding, they have issues in implementing the results of those proof of concepts or pilots, and that was considered a failure in the MIT report, I think.
Yeah, and one of the most significant or common problems is that the AI tool is chosen before the problem is clear, and this usually happens during the peak of the hype when corporations and companies drive the usage of AI just to please the investors and stakeholders. And this phenomena is also known as the shiny object syndrome, and this sort of belongs to these hype cycles which repeat every time a new and emerging technology comes. And this has happened, for example, with web something like 30 years ago, and with big data about 15 years ago, and with conventional AI about 10 years or so. And we can already see with generative AI that this hype is sort of stagnating, and companies are starting to handle more rationally the fact how to gain actual value from the generative AI. And as we can see from the past technologies or technologies that are still valid but have been hyped before, big data is of course still relevant, even though it is not talked about that much, but it's sort of in the background, and it of course is like the fuel or the source for the AI nowadays. And if we want to take a metaphor out of this, it is like having a key first and then trying to find the right lock for it. So it really doesn't make any sense to have the tool first and then try to define the problem. So we should remember the basics of business and product development here. We should always find a problem and then create and develop a solution for it.
Well, I at least have the shiny object syndrome every time I'm starting a new sport. But it's interesting you brought up the big data. It reminds me that at ATR, when we are beginning new AI projects, quite often the data is not in order. What do you think of this? Do you think the status is that it is in order, or how is it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, just like Janne mentioned, that big data was this kind of like hyped thing, but still, well, maybe not hyped enough, as we still see that the data becomes an issue often. So there's this decades-old like principle of garbage in, garbage out, and it still stands today, even more so with AI, I think. So still what we often see is that data is missing, it's messy or scattered around the place, and we're, like Janne said, it's the data is always like kind of the backbone of AI. So if we're trying to, for example, do some kind of machine learning, then if the data simply doesn't exist, then we can't do that. Or if the data is there but it's skewed in some way or not aligned correctly, then we're gonna end up with a bad model, essentially. And often what we see is that people might underestimate how long data work takes. So it can be a bit of annoying, especially if you have that shiny toy syndrome and you really want to get started quickly. Then if you're faced with the fact that you have to first gather data for the 6 months before you can even start to apply that new toy you have. But still, that's just something that you will have to do and organizations will have to do. You have to have those foundations in place before you can apply many of these AI solutions.
Yeah, and the same goes for the processes and workflows. So if you have bad or messy or chaotic processes and workflows, you just make messier and more chaotic workflows with AI if you apply automation to them. And you really should just focus on fixing the data and the workflows first before applying AI to them.
Yeah, also when still talking about like why AI projects fail, and especially maybe why we are failing to see that like clear enough business value in them, it could be often that, especially in larger organizations, there are different teams and working in silos, maybe not talking to each other that much, and they might end up kind of building the same thing if there's no like shared AI platform or coordination or kind of a company-wide strategy on what we're focusing on. So you end up with multiple chatbots or multiple kind of documents analysis tools or machine learning prediction proof of concepts, and you end up with slightly different versions of the same thing, and maybe none of them individually are bringing enough value. But when you're doing this in like separate teams, you're missing the synergy benefits. If it was a company-wide thing, maybe the business value could be there. But if it's smaller teams doing it, then it could be harder to achieve that. And then it's seen as a failure.
Yeah, and on top of all of those, there is always the psychological side of problems that lead to failure. So many times expectations for AI are way too high, and people just expect the AI to magically fix everything. And sometimes the skills and the confidence for using the AI are missing. And it is a fact that there is always or almost always resistance when a new technology comes, and people just have to adjust for it.
That's a very good coverage. Thank you. But let's move into more positive themes, and let's look at the other side of the coin. So how is one able to succeed then in AI projects? Could you please elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, I think what's the most fundamental thing, again, with the foundations and those being in place, I think just like I talked about how failure is defined, in order to succeed, I think you have to have a very clear criteria. What does success look like? So if you want to use AI to make something, some process or whatever better, then what does better actually mean in that case? Does it mean that time is saved? Does it mean money is saved? Does it mean that there are less errors in some process? I feel like if you don't have these kind of measurable metrics in place, it's really hard to call something a success if you can't really measure if you hit that goal or not.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe the most important aspect on success is finding the right problem. And this most easily this happens when you bring the technical people and the business people together. So the technical people should be given the possibility to thoroughly research what the problem is and what should be solved with AI. They should be sort of building the bridge between the technical people and business people and have the same understanding. And based on the mentioned research, external partnerships see twice the success rate of internal builds. And this is because usually the external teams have better access to deep specialized expertise, of course, and they may have already built such tools before, and they can reduce the friction from the organizational silos, like Iidaliisa mentioned. So they can see over the borders of the silos and build solutions that benefit the whole corporation or company, not just individual teams. And what kind of problems should be solved is the answer to that is that you should solve the most mundane and repetitive tasks usually, because that is usually the most valuable approach. These are usually considered the so-called most boring problems, but they are also they have the lowest difficulty to solve, and they usually have the highest ROI.
And I think once you have done that, once you have gotten like kind of these like low-hanging fruits, the easy to solve, high-value tasks, then a lot of organizations are maybe asking, okay, what next? Because you're going to run out of those low-hanging fruits eventually. If you're kind of just adding AI into existing steps and maybe getting more efficient, more optimized processes, you're going to run out of steps and processes eventually. There's a limited number of those. Then you have to start looking, okay, where can AI bring growth? You might have to redesign whole workflows and steps and think really outside the box to find where you can find success with AI after you've done the kind of the easy stuff. I just heard this week about this Nordic State of AI report that had interviewed organizations about how satisfied they were with their kind of at the place where they are with AI. And it found that the organizations that were most satisfied, most happy with where they were in their AI journey were organizations that had moved on from just making their existing processes more efficient, but they had used AI to make entirely new business for themselves. So they had actually gotten growth out of AI. And I think if you manage to do that, then it's at least very easy to call it a success when you do that.
Yeah, and like with every big culture or organizational change, the leaders have to be actively involved in the change. So this also means that the leaders at the top of the company have to be actively using the AI themselves, and they have to signal that this actually matters, and this affects the sort of psychological side also of taking the AI to use, and they just have to take the ownership from the AI projects.
Yeah, and I think the psychological side is important. I know I've been talking a lot about business value and return on investment and measurable monetary value, but there's also the whole other side to it, not just the business value and not just the technological aspects, like how accurate is a model or something like that, but you can find also success in seeing, for example, how people work differently. Maybe if with AI you get those processes optimized and you're essentially freeing up people's time from those repetitive, boring tasks to something more fruitful. They can be more innovative, they can be more happy with their basically everyday work if they don't have to focus so much on that stuff that nobody wants to do as much. There can be, AI can help with like handovers between projects or make decision making faster, and yeah, just measuring somehow also that how AI is transforming that everyday work. You can find success there as well, I think.
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the leadership and grassroots level perspective. That leads us nicely into our third and final theme of today, the human aspect. Now, Harvard Business Review just recently published an article about how AI is affecting the work life. And in that article, it was saying that people started working extra hours just spontaneously. They started multitasking just because they felt like with AI they can do more. What do you think? Doesn't this sound a bit dangerous?
Yeah, so this is really about the human and the people and culture side of AI. So they suggest in the article and research of HBR that an AI practice should be created for a workplace. So this practice could include explicit norms for when to use AI and when to stop, and how the work is based generally. So you should remember to build in pauses to your work day and decide when AI is not used, and sequence your work instead of multitasking, to focus only on one thing at a time. And you should also remember the human grounding. That, for example, means that you should do check-ins and reviews with your colleagues and have reflection time and meetings to improve decision making.
Yeah, the psychological side is definitely interesting. I think we've probably all heard the talk about AI is taking our jobs and what we're going to do next. And it can be a really difficult time in many organizations to kind of figure out how to approach this. But I think the most important thing is to kind of not let AI take the wheel. So humans are still the ones making the final decisions, and AI can support us and make our work more enjoyable, but it shouldn't replace kind of like human judgment. And it would be good if organizations had like clear rules for the use of AI, when to use it, when not to, but also when to trust AI and when not to. And I think especially if there's like resistance among employees or fears about what AI is bringing into the workplace, then well, my background is I've studied communication, so I naturally think that communication is key. But yeah, communicating why we're doing what we're doing, when we're doing, that kind of stuff, reducing the uncertainty, letting people know what's happening openly, involving employees in as much as you can. And if you have training, and well, with the European Union's AI Act, you will have training if you're using AI, then making that training practical and actually useful and not just theoretical is a good way to also make people feel more involved. And I think in a lot of organizations there are probably people who are more scared about the AI or more resistant to it, and then there are people who are really excited about the things they can bring and they want to try new stuff, and kind of like harnessing those people's enthusiasm, I think, is really key. So you could create these kind of like AI champions or ambassadors in your organization to help with the possible resistance that you're having. But also just listening to people. So having feedback loops in place, ensuring that if you're giving some sort of AI tools to your workforce, then that they're actually useful and good. Also, that's going to help with security issues. If you have good tools in place, people are not as kind of tempted to use some not approved tool just because it's better. We've seen in reports that is also a thing that could happen in some organizations. And when you have those successes in whatever area, then you should celebrate those and tell about them so people can see and feel how AI is a good thing.
Yeah, and Iidaliisa mentioned about the feedback loop, so you should be able to accept the setbacks which inevitably come along the path of taking AI to use, and you should be able to learn from the failures and try again with better understanding. And you should always remember that optimizing is an iterative process, and it most likely takes time. And you should just really be persistent when taking AI to use. And remember that perfect planning is not always the key. You just have to be persistent and learn from the failures. This all really comes back to the basics of having a healthy and encouraging culture in your company.
Thanks both for your comments. Now, we've covered quite a bit today, but I'd like to ask each of you, what would be the one thing you think the audience should take from this webinar with them? I'll let Janne reply first.
I would like to say again that do not fall for the shiny object syndrome. Obsess over finding the right problem and use time and resources to find the right problem.
What about Iidaliisa?
I think for me it comes down to those definitions. So there's this Finnish saying that well planned is half done, but I think especially with these AI projects, or usually any software development project in general, it's like well defined is half done. So if you don't have definitions for what success or what failure looks like, if you don't have a definition of done, then how do you know if your project or pilot or proof of concept or whatever did what you wanted it to do? So having those definitions in place before you start, I think, is really important.
All right. There was also an opportunity to send in some questions through the registration form. So let's look at a few of those. We still have little time left here at the webinar. The first one is, how does one convince a decision maker on using AI in their work when they are worried about data security and are fearful that their data may be used to train LLMs and become public? Would you, Iidaliisa, like to take this one?
Yeah, I can definitely understand where that comes from, that fear, because especially like, for example, when ChatGPT came out, we had these cases, and this was in the news, that there were organizations where people had kind of just copied and pasted confidential information to these, especially the free and open services, and then the data kind of leaked out of there. So blindly trusting a system isn't good, and some amount of concern is very healthy. But I think when you think about how to convince a decision maker, you don't have to ask for that blind trust, because this, if you're using some sort of enterprise solution or having a custom built software with a partner, then there should be contractual guarantees on how stuff is done. You should have information on the technical safeguards. They should be very easily auditable. You should have information about where the data lives and who can access the data and in what, and GDPR stuff also, like data residency stuff. That is all information that you should have in the contract, and that includes if the data can be used for retraining the models. That's something that also the information should be there. And if it isn't, if you can't find that information in the terms or the contract or the policy documents or something, that then you should be concerned that that concern is valid. So just making sure that that information, those contracts are in place, and then you can trust the system.
Thanks. I think we are able to do a couple more. The next one, this one is actually pretty long. What IT infrastructure is needed? How to build agents which can utilize the information and data inside the organization to give better results and solutions to questions employees during design. Access to a shared driver cloud, emails, and Teams groups where project-related discussions have been done and answers to questions might be found. Very long question. Are you able to answer this, Janne?
Yeah, so it of course depends on the company, but generally we could recommend that you should match the infrastructure to your organization's capabilities. So if you have developers and development, or you don't have development resources, you maybe should use low-code platforms. And if you have developer teams, you should align with your existing technology stack. So for example, if you use Microsoft products, you could use, for example, Azure AI Studio. And the LLMs typically run in the cloud, so they don't require much power from the user side. And you should just focus on secure integrations and good architecture and access control to give the agents to the ability to harness the knowledge effectively.
Yeah. Let's do one more. I'll take a question related to ATR custom tools, so it'll be focused on our ATR custom tools prospects and customers. The question is, when will AI be built into custom tools? And actually our product manager Simo Erkinheimo had some time to answer this, so I'll just read his reply, how he's seeing it. We don't have a schedule for custom tools, but we're actively exploring ways to utilize AI. We're in somewhat privileged position in the sense that our user base, mostly SolidWorks users, generally have very decent computers which might make it possible to run small AI models locally. Generally, our team does have ideas like AI-based property validation and AI-based property migration of legacy files, but we would like to hear more requests from users, so please send us your ideas how AI could improve custom tools. Now also, there's a possibility to send questions through YouTube, so please fill up that chat. And as we are now getting short of time here, we'll get back to those questions in writing afterwards. But thank you all joining today. Thank you, Iidaliisa. Thank you, Janne. Our next ATR Custom Tools webinar will take place in April, so please follow up our communication and tune in again in a month or so. But thanks again, and bye-bye for now.
Thanks.